twagira ngo nanone nkuko nari bivuze tubaha ikaze. Twagize umugisha wo kubona nyakubahwa umunyamabanga wa leta muri Minisiteri y'Ubuhinzi n'Ubworozi, ari nawe mushyitsi mukuru muri inama, kandi dufite n'umuyobozi wa RDB akaba n'umwe mu bagize guverinoma y'u Rwanda. N'umugisha rero ntatinze nagira ngo sabe chairman of private sector kugira ngo azatugezeho ijambo ndetse anatwakira abashyitsi muri rusange. Thank you.
Nyakubahwa State Minister muri Minisiteri y'Ubuhinzi n'Ubworozi, Nyakubahwa CEO and Cabinet Member wa RDB, banyacyubahiro bandi mwese muri hano mu nzego zanyu zitandukanye, bagenzi banjye ba members ba board ya private sector, bacuruzi, mwaramutse. Ngira ngo uyu munsi ntabwo ari amagambo menshi kubera ko igikorwa dufite uyu munsi ni igikorwa ngira ngo twakibonye cyanditse hariya. Ngira ngo nabashimire kuko nabonye mwaje in big number, mwabukereye. Ndizera ko mwese munyotewe kugira ngo tuvuge kuri iyi subject, cyane cyane ku ruhare rwa private sector. Nagira ngo nshimire byimazeyo Minisiteri y'Ubuhinzi n'Ubworozi. Uyu munsi mu by'ukuri twari tumaze igihe tutegereje, yaba State Minister, yaba Minister wa Agriculture. Ngira ngo twabivuganyeho igihe iminsi myinshi cyane kugira ngo uyu munsi ubeho, kugira ngo dutangire tuvuge kuri iki kibazo cy'ubuhinzi, ukuntu private sector yaba more involved mu buhinzi. Ndabizi ko mwese ko muri hano mufite aho muhuriye n'ubuhinzi, yaba furi cyangwa part. Ariko ngira ngo ku rwego rwa private sector nabivuga mbese ngo iki, navuga yuko tugifite ahantu tumva tutari satisfied. Tubona muri agriculture harimo potential nyinshi cyane zo kuba private sector yakwinvestisamo, kandi nkaba nanavuga ko iri very much ready. Ariko haracyari imbogamizi. Iyo uganiye na benshi, yaba ari abarimo, yaba ari abashaka kujyamo, bakubwira zigenda zose ziganisha kuri Minisiteri y'Ubuhinzi n'Ubworozi. Uyu munsi rero twagize imana, twagize amahirwe, nagira ngo rwose mwongere mumfashe dushimire State Minister Tony kuba uyu munsi yawutangije. Nizere ko ari ubwa mbere, ariko hazabaho n'indi myinshi. Tukiha n'intego ko mu gihe cya vuba tugiye kugira iyo potentialite twese tubona, twese dukozaho imitwe y'intoki, tuyigire reality, tuyibyaze umusaruro. So ntizimbye mu magambo, nagira ngo mbizeze ko bagenzi banjye bari hano bose bari ready kubyaza umusaruro potentialities ziri muri mu buhinzi, muri sector y'ubuhinzi n'ubworozi. Bafite icyo babiziho mu buryo butandukanye. Ngira ngo icyo bashakaga ni full partnership na MINAGRI kugira ngo turebe uburyo twarushaho kunoza imikoranire, turebe uburyo twarushaho kunoza uburyo bwo guhanahana amakuru bityo tukabona inzira yazaduhuza kugira ngo tugende uru rugendo mu by'ukuri ruzagirira akamaro, nizera ntashidikanya not only atari gusa sectors zacu ebyiri, yaba private sector na public, ariko igihugu cyose izagirira akamaro igihugu cyose, kuko sector ya agriculture tuzi agaciro ifite mu buzima bwacu, mu buzima bw'igihugu cyacu. So nkeka ko uyu munsi rwose twagombye kwa ministre turagushimira cyane, ariko twiteze kubyaza umusaruro ushoboka, kandi turawufata nk'intangiriro nziza, kuko ni ikintu twari dutegereje igihe kirekire. Abantu mwabonye hano, ngira ngo MC wenda ntiyabonye opportunity yo kuba presenta, nihaye briefly nagira ngo mbabwire ko hano hari abantu bo mu ngeri zose z'ubuzima bw'igihugu cyacu. Ni groupe yacu ya Golden Circle, I'm sure you are aware of it. Hari abo wabonyemo wenda bajya gukeka mu yandi masekiteri, ariko bose nagiye mbabaza nsanga hari aho bahurira n'ubuhinzi, which is good. Urabona aba lawyers, urabona abantu bari muri mine, urabona abantu bari muri arts and crafts. Ushobora kwibaza uti se aba bahuriye, nicyo kikugaragariza rero iyi sector yacu. Hari abantu bari muri transport, nicyo kikugaragariza iyi sector y'ubuhinzi ko iduhuza twese. Kandi nagira ngo nkwizeze ko ngira ngo nibwo bwa mbere twagira a walking breakfast ifite abantu bangana gutya. So nagira ngo namwe mbashimire, ubundi ntabafata umwanya munini, nagira ngo mbifurize ibiganiro byiza. Murakoze.
Thank you Benjamin. Good morning. Francis Gatare, CEO of RDB, Chairman of PSF, Benjamin Stephen, CEO of PSF, Christine, President of the Agriculture Chamber, the Private Sector Federation, captains of industry here present, colleagues. There are a number of colleagues from the Ministry of Agriculture, from a number of projects we work with on a daily basis. I'm so pleased to be here this morning. For the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources, for the government of Rwanda in general, this is a very, very important interaction that we are so honored and privileged really to be able to have with the private sector federation members, but also other partners here present. So we'll be mixing languages. I hope it's fine if I continue in English. While Chairman was speaking in Kinyarwanda, for a number of people who are here who cannot understand Kinyarwanda, I hope we can understand each other. So, as the Chairman said, I would say this is really one of the biggest interactions we've had, really, between the government of Rwanda and investors, mostly local investors, and others who have been able to join us today for this function. And I think this is really timely, considering not only the importance of the sector that we all know, but most importantly, the remaining period as we move towards our Vision 2020. And we know that, more than ever, private sector will have to drive the transformation process that we are all really aspiring to. And that's why we feel this is really the first among many others that will follow, so that we make sure that the opportunities that we know we have and we're going to share with you are really taken advantage of by as many of you as possible, and even those who are not here today. So I'll certainly go straight in a minute to the presentation. I wanted to make sure I make the presentation myself. Of course, I have my colleagues who are here representing the Rwanda Agriculture Board, the National Agriculture Export Board, or the ministry as well, in charge of really making sure we have the right policies in place. And other partners. We are privileged to have USAID represented here. USAID has now invested in a 5-year project that is really private sector driven, in agriculture specifically. This is $25 million that is waiting for many private players to really go to and try to find the right opportunities to take advantage of. So the importance of this sector, if you allow me, I'll go straight to the presentation because most of what I will say is also captured in the presentation. The first slide, as you can see here, really this shows our strategy, our strategic plan for the next 5 years. Now less than 5 years, because this is a 2013-2018 strategic plan, which is in line with our EDPRS2, our Economic Development and Poverty Reduction Strategy 2. And for us to achieve the targets of EDPRS2 and our vision, there are a number of goals that we need to achieve. We want really to move from a subsistence sector to a knowledge-based, value-creating sector. We know that from investments we've been making in this sector for the last, let me say, 15 years, we have really been able to see a great change from that subsistence, based to really a knowledge-based and value-creating sector. But we know that we still have a long way to go to grow as rapidly as possible, both in relation to the production, commercialization, as we increase incomes and reduce poverty. So we know the importance of this sector, not only for transforming the economy, but also for the lives of our people, trying to lift as many people as possible out of poverty. Now, the key areas of transformation in our strategic plan are the following. As you can see, we want to be able to, moving from guaranteeing food availability to generating food security through growth. Basically, this is about sustaining food security. As a country, through a lot of investments we've made in the sector, we've been able to achieve food security across the country with some, surplus areas and a few deficit areas that really try to balance and find really food security situation. But we need to be able to sustain that. It will be very important. Transforming passive and recipient farmers into those who are active market players with new skills. Here we are talking about really farmers who need really to be more professional. We are trying to create, to make sure that they become professionals, part of cooperatives with really new skills that will transform their way of thinking, the mindset, but also the other technical skills that are needed to transform the sector. Changing the government from being a direct provider to a facilitator for the private sector. This can really not be, overemphasized. We know that if I take the example of the agriculture sector alone, since the year 2000 till today, we've invested quite heavily in agriculture. We've invested close to 200 billion in irrigation. This is a very important area that really allows us to make sure we address the issues related to climate change, so people can really take advantage of those investments we've made. We've invested more than 10 billion in mechanization. Again, we want the private sector today to take over. So all these investments, today we really want to become facilitators, working very closely with the Rwanda Development Board, having the right conducive business environment and allow the private sector really to take over. And we continue as we create the right policies, have the right legal and regulatory framework in place, and then the private sector can do the investments. From a supplier of mostly the domestic market to an exporter to the region, but also beyond. But talking about the domestic market, we know that we also can do more. We'll be talking about some of the opportunities we believe people could take advantage of. When we talk about vegetables, when we talk about fruits, these are areas where people can invest. And we try to reduce the foreign currency we are spending on imported fruits and vegetables. Really, you will see the kind of opportunities we have, the land available for people to take advantage of so that we can reduce these imports that we believe really are not necessary. So this comes back to the roles, and I will spend probably a minute, maybe in the second part. Of course, I've mentioned what the public sector is supposed to be doing, development partners who also work with on a daily basis, but the private sector. We want you to invest in high-value traditional and emerging export crops. We want you to be able to share costs with the public sector. I was talking about irrigation. We've invested quite heavily. Why can't the private sector start also investing in irrigation? We know there are initiatives in small-scale irrigation that people are already taking advantage of, but you could also invest in large-scale irrigation that we have been doing as a public. Profitable new opportunities and adding value. We'll be sharing some of them. But we know that you can create your own opportunities. What we share here is really what we have identified. But we do believe that you are innovative, you can really come up with even new opportunities we may not have really come across, but you who are in the private sector can be able to really identify. Market pricing for inputs and outputs. Again, this is the role of the private sector, really making sure that the market really is driven by the way you operate in the various areas of agriculture. So the rest, public sector, growth factors, skills, again, this is just because we try to put some areas under the public sector, but we realize that even in terms of skills, the private sector could still play a role. So what we put here is just indicative, but some of them, these areas are flexible in a way, because the private sector can also be part of that. And development partners, of course, we need to keep working together. Next. Next. Now, these are important facts that people should be aware of. You know, when we talk about transforming the sector of agriculture, it's just not for the sake of doing it. It really has some important facts that people need to be aware of. When you look at population density in the country, you know, I think, as you can see, Rwanda is the blue one. We are now more than 400 people per square kilometer. This is one of the highest in the world. And when it comes to arable land, which I hope it's going to be the next, of course, compared to these other countries, you can see where we're coming from. And you can understand the importance really of really not wasting a single, you know, hectare of land that this country has. Next. So the average per capita availability of arable land in Rwanda between 2010 and 2014 was 0.1 hectares. So you can imagine what it means. When we deliberately decided to introduce a number of flagship programs back in 2007, when we were talking about land consolidation, crop intensification, really we were looking at these important facts that you see here. 0.1 hectare per person in this country. As you can imagine, there's nothing much you can do. But we know that 10 years ago, people were happy, really farming on 0.1, maybe 0.5, because here we are considering the total population of about 12 million. But we know that the population doing agriculture is more than 70%, around 8 million. So meaning that you would have people with 0.5, maybe 1 hectare. But how much can you achieve with that? Probably very little. So we want these also to be important facts that people keep in mind as they think about intervening in the sector. So this is really a very important indicator that we want people to have really at the back of their mind as they consider investing in agriculture. So crop intensification was about really selecting a number of crops. First, the land consolidation, because we wanted people to bring their land together, their plots together, have 5, 10, 20, 50 hectares together growing one crop, so that it becomes even easy to get them access inputs, but also extension services. This is on the farmer side. I'm not even talking about yet people who own their land more than 5, 10 as individuals. Here was a policy, a very important policy, that was trying really to address the individual farmers we're facing while we're trying to run their farms, individually. It was quite difficult. We had to select 7 crops in 2007. These are the same crops that are driving growth of the sector, but also are really lifting as many people as we are trying to reach out of poverty. So this is extremely important. Next. Now, this was just some bit of background. I would have spent more time really talking about this overview so that people understand where we're coming from. But I hope with what I've presented, we are able to understand really why we are pushing hard to have as many people as possible, joining the sector of agriculture. We want to have mini rigs, really thinking of beyond having a hotel and have maybe to farm in one of the marshlands. And as a ministry, we are the custodian of all the marshlands in this country, we are ready to work with you and avail some of the land to you so that you can think beyond having a hotel that most likely will lack some of the basic foods that it needs or that they need. And we know that this is something that you can consider as part of your future investments or hopefully current investments that you have in the pipeline. So now, Imihigo, we wanted to share with you our Imihigo. I'm sure by now, all the participants here present know what Imihigo is or what Imihigo are. We are really a performance-based country now. We are all accountable. So we've come up with this kind of, policy to make sure that we emphasize this importance of being accountable. So this was introduced back in 2006. As you can see, a number of really flagship policies and programs were introduced during that particular period. And this was really to reinforce government capacity and accountability and serve as an avenue for citizen participation. But it's not only government, because we know that the private sector is also, has been introduced to this important, initiative. So as you all know, each year ministries at the ministries level, districts, we sign this Imihigo with His Excellency the President. They are prepared according to the government priorities, as stated in our EDPRS2. Again, these are shared, I would say, targets and indicators, because the private sector also participated in developing the EDPRS2 and other mid-term development plans that we have, our 7-year government program, the Vision 2020, and a number of others like MDGs, which are also, important for us. We keep monitoring them, and we've been really doing well in most of these development plans, but of course we still need to do more. So it has evolved really over the years to become a tool for effective planning, implementation, performance evaluation, and accountability for all institutions, public, but I also want to believe also private now. I'm sure you all also sign your own Imihigo. So the second generation, we are calling it second generation because we really wanted to be even more focused and really prioritize those initiatives or interventions that will really bring transformation. But we also wanted to even coordinate more within government, but also considering the decentralization policy and work very closely with local government. So this is a new generation that was brought into the system so that we are able to be more efficient and be able to coordinate better and even prioritize interventions going forward. So indicators supported by 2 or 3 priority actions, transformative actions in agriculture, exports, and others. So this chart really shows how we really try to enhance or to strengthen the initiative of really having Imihigo and involve as many other stakeholders as possible and really be able to have a certain focus. So when it comes to agriculture, in fact, for the new generation, joint Imihigo have been divided into clusters. So agriculture is one of the clusters. But when we talk about agriculture cluster, it's really about the Ministry of Agriculture, but it's also about other institutions, other stakeholders. So much as we still have our own Imihigo as the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources, we now also have joint Imihigo under the agriculture cluster. So I hope you understand the difference. And the Imihigo under that particular cluster, where you also find the Ministry of Infrastructure, where you find the Rwanda Development Board, where you find the Private Sector Federation and its members, where you find the Ministry of Local Government, the Ministry of Education, and many others are really part of this new generation of Imihigo that we've started now. So when it comes to agriculture, as you can see, our Imihigo are around 3 important components. It's really about increased crop productivity. We know really that we want to tap into the potential that we still have in making sure we increase productivity as far as our crops are concerned. We still have, according to the recent numbers, between 40 and 50% of potential in terms of increasing productivity across the 7 priority crops that I've mentioned at the beginning. We may, come to those later. It is the same around animal resource productivity. Again, we need to keep investing in animal productivity. We do need really to intensify our interventions in the animal productivity area or animal resources area so that we are able again to reach the targets. Back a little bit, there was this also other part. Now this is about exports. We still believe, and you can see in numbers that agriculture still contributes a lot in terms of export revenues. Not only traditionally through coffee and tea, but we've also now started diversifying. New products are coming up, and we also want to be able to add value to even those traditional cash crops that we have. So this really shows that we still need to do more in terms of increasing export revenues. The growth, the annual growth that we are targeting over the EDPRS2 and PSTA3 period is 28%. And agriculture will also have to keep playing an important role. Of course, diversification in terms of services that really also play a critical role. We believe that with all these efforts put together, this growth should be achieved from 20 today that we are able to achieve on an annual basis. Next. So very quickly, we really wanted to share with you our specific Imihigo for this coming year. As I kept looking around, I saw a number of people I've been interacting with. I see Haj here, I see Bat, many others here. We've been interacting on some of these Imihigo that we are going to see here. But we wanted all of you to be aware of them. We wanted all of you to see them, and then we look at how really we make sure that we meet these objectives that we fixed for ourselves, for our country. We are very specific. Again, these are transformational Imihigo. These have nothing to do with the other Imihigo that we have as an institution. We have many, many others. We have to expand in terms of irrigation, much as we would really want to private sector to take over, but we still have a number of projects in pipeline. For mechanization, we are really moving out of mechanization as government. Good enough, we've seen a number of private players who really want to move into mechanization, but we still have a number of targets in mechanization as well. And in other areas, in terracing, in animal productivity that I talked about, vaccines, artificial insemination, we have all those in our institutional Imihigo. But these are joint and we believe can be transformational. Now, first of all, we wanted to be able to have a land data bank, just starting from what the ministry has. Now, it's not that ministry owns the land, but we are the custodian. The ministry is the custodian of some land here in the country, mostly marshlands. So we wanted really to understand where is this land and who is on that land and what is, this land being used for. Because to be very frank with you, it's been quite difficult to know exactly who really is on the land and what are these people doing on the land. So we've been able to identify some land that we felt we could actually discuss with the private sector and see if some of this land could not be available to them so that they can take advantage of it and invest. So you will see it on the next slides because we've been able to see how much land we have per district actually. And we've realized that actually we have freehold titles, of about 48 and more thousand hectares of land, just in the hands of the ministry. This is, of course, coupled with land owned by other people. Probably some of you here in the room, I'm sure we would have a lot of land to exploit and really make a difference. But we wanted at least to show at the level of the ministry that we want transformation and we want you to take advantage of these resources, very limited resources we have. Working very closely with the Ministry of Natural Resources, we've been able to do that. What we are also doing is that we are trying to now specify the boundaries, which has also been a challenge. You find yourself in a marshland, because boundaries are not clear, a person comes to complain the next day that you've moved into his or her land. So together with the Ministry of Natural Resources, soon you will see, a Prime Minister's order gazetted with the exact boundaries of each marshland in this country. That's also very important to make sure that there are no conflicts around land in this country. Now, the profiling of irrigated land. As I said, we've invested in more than 28,000 hectares of land since 2001. We've invested more than 150 billion in these sites. Now, the ones you see here are not the only ones. Here we have profiled 40 of them, but we've come up with more than 85. Actually, there are 86. My colleagues here can confirm that. We have about 86 that we have identified where we've put a lot of investments, public money. Now, we said, out of the 86, of course the exercise will continue, can we prioritize some of them, looking at the size of the land, but also the size of investments we've put into them, and see if eventually we could not increase productivity, at least on those sites that we have profiled. Now, the 40 sites, I think if all combined are about 12,000. People may say 12,000 hectares. For Rwanda, it's huge. We can't, as I said, even afford to miss, maximum productivity on a single hectare in this country. So this is the 12,000 that we've profiled. We've really got to even understand how the irrigation systems work. One of the challenges that we've been facing is to be able to have the right people managing, operating, and maintaining the infrastructure that we've invested in with such heavy investments. Much as we keep training our farmers grouped into cooperatives, some of the irrigation systems are simply, people are not able to operate them, are very difficult to manage. So we've said, how can we go back and look at all these challenges farmers are facing, despite the efforts really they want to put into this, and where possible, we create partnerships. There are some people here in the room who could say, tomorrow I go to Rurambi, where we have close to 800 hectares of land, where we are growing rice today, only half of the land, but we still have the other half that we are trying to give to an investor. But when you look at the irrigation infrastructure at that particular site, this is in the Bugesera district, you very quickly understand that a farmer cooperative would hardly be able to operate such an infrastructure or even maintain it. So we've been investing as government even in maintenance. So every year we spend 2 billion Rwandan francs on maintaining irrigation infrastructure across the country. But we do believe that with the kind of crops that you can grow on those particular sites, they can easily maintain themselves with the resources from those crops. But why should government continue to invest 2 billion Rwandan francs every year to maintain the infrastructure that is supposed to generate enough returns and maintain this infrastructure? So this is what we are bringing to you. This is the average, back a little bit. The average optimal yield in the turnaround sites. We've called it a turnaround exercise, to turn around some of these sites. But as I said, we have many more. We want to be able to achieve 8 metric tons for maize. Today we are at around 3.5, 4, where people are doing well, can do 5. But we know that we can even do more than that, even more than 8. But we say, even if for this particular fiscal year we could go from 5, 6 to 8, that already would be a good achievement. But we know that if people really want to take advantage of these opportunities, they could even do more. It is the same with rice, soybean, and then the other vegetables, onion, tomato, carrot, and others. So these are productivity potentials that we really want people to consider as we really turn around the particular sites that we've mentioned there. Terracing is the same. We've invested also quite heavily in terraces. Today we have close to 100,000 hectares of terraces or terraced land across the country. But when you look at returns on those terraces, very little has been achieved. We've actually realized that some of the land that we've been terracing is owned by some people who are here in Kigali, who really are not very much interested in such developed land. But when we go to select sites where we put irrigation or terracing, of course we do not want to consider each individual, whether an individual wants it or not. We particularly look at consolidated land, but when it comes now to getting people to take advantage of the land, we realize that there are some people here in Kigali who are not interested. By the way, we are coming up with a ministerial order that is going to give people 3 years. After 3 years, if you have not developed the land, if you are not used the land, we give it to someone else who would be able to use it. But as I said, we have a lot of terraced land that we would want people to invest on. Of course, most of them are on the hillside. But we know that with the current technologies, even in mechanization and others, people can really put some crops on those plots, on those sites. But what is also very important to consider is that it is quite expensive compared to how much we are spending in irrigating the marshlands. It's more than 3 times the cost of irrigating, the marshland. So investing in irrigation on the hillside is 3 times, costly than the resources you put in a marshland. So you can imagine going to a site in Nyanza where we have about 200 and something, 300 hectares. Is it Gwabichuma? 400 hectares. We've put irrigation infrastructure there. I think we've spent more than $10 million on that particular site. But when you go to visit that site, apart from seeing the very nice terraces that everybody enjoys, even when flying, but there is no single crop on that particular land. Is it something that we really want to accept? I think we should not. We should not, and we should really be able to take advantage of that. So terraces are also there, and they need people to invest in them. Where possible, of course, we encourage farmer cooperatives because those are the people who live there. We do not want people to go and grab the land. It's not about grabbing, but it's about creating the right partnerships and allow really these partnerships to generate the right returns that we want for the sites. Next. I'll try to move faster. Seed processing plant. These are very specific projects that we have. Some of the people here in the room have heard already of these opportunities. We have a seed processing plant in the special economic zone. We want it to be operational. We've been running it as government. We initially signed a management contract with one of the seed companies, but we realized that we need to close this deal. Maybe if not with this particular company, move to another one that can allow us to really make this plant operational. The file is with RDB. We work together on a daily basis. We do hope that by end of this year, we should have this plant operational because it is very, very important, especially when it is a time for farmers to start accessing inputs. Because that's where we are able to process the seeds and put the seeds into the right packaging materials. That's what this plant does. The ETI project, this is an export related project in irrigation. It is in Kirehe area. There are 2 sites. The command area is about 9,000 hectares. So you can imagine 9,000 hectares of land that we are trying to irrigate. So this is a partnership with the government of India through Exim Bank India. It's a $120 million project, and we are currently in the process of finalizing studies. But at some point, we will need the private sector to really take over this particular project. 9,000 hectares really is a sizable land, and a number of crops will be prioritized on that particular land. So today we are finalizing studies. Soon there will be a tender out for people to start putting on the sites the irrigation infrastructure, and later we'll be able to hand over this project to our partners, because it will have a center of excellence for mechanization. It will have a number of other facilities, even for processing. So at some point, we want you to be aware that soon we'll be engaging you in creating the right partnerships for this project. We do not want to make a mistake of having everything ready and then not have any partner to manage. And we do not want as government, because when the contractors finish, they will want to hand the project over to government. But we want to have created the right partnerships for a better management. Nasho 2 irrigation site. This is under the Howard Buffett Foundation. You may have heard of this foundation that is really working with us on same area actually. It's all in the Eastern Province, and we are starting with 1,300 hectares. Again, the partnership is around the infrastructure of irrigation, but at some point we also want to bring on board farmer cooperatives and, where necessary, the private sector. So we want you also to be aware of the project and start really taking ownership of the project so that we are able to partner at some point. Very quickly, around animal production or animal productivity, as you could see, it's around crop productivity. This is now animal resources. We have a Gako beef project. Some people here in the room may have heard of this particular project. And we're talking of around 3,000 hectares of land. So we want really to be able to have a good beef project for export. This is mainly for export. And as we speak, people are working on making sure we have the basic infrastructure. People are constructing the roads. And at some point, I think we are now requesting for people to express interest. So people here in the room could come together, form a consortium and express interest in this project. You may not consider the 3,000, maybe half of it, or even all of it. But I do believe that if you put your efforts together, you could even go for all of it. So it's a good project, and we will be able to start exporting beef and sustain what some people have already started. We know we had started exporting some beef to Congo Brazzaville, but we know that we are not consistent, most likely because the supply side is really not well functional. So we want to be able to have such a project that is going to be transformational in terms of increasing the cattle for beef, but also in terms of revenues that we can generate from beef. Mukamira Dairy, this is in the western part of Rwanda in Nyabihu district. It's a huge facility. Again, people here have seen it. But we've given ourselves this umuhigo that we should have it up and running this year. The final or the last equipment will be in the next couple of months, and we hope that some people from the private sector will express interest in taking over. We are in discussions with some of them, but we feel it is important you also see it as a good opportunity. It has the capacity to process about 80,000 liters a day with 2 shifts. So it's 40,000 one shift and 80,000 2 shifts. And it has about 8 processing lines, from cheese up to other products that we consume, that some of which we still import, by the way. Even a hotel in Musanze, just maybe 20 minutes from that particular facility, still imports maybe yogurts or cheese from, I don't know, as far as South Africa or other places. So we really want people to take advantage of that facility, which is huge. It is on 7 hectares of land, which means you could even use part of the land for another important investment. Rubirizi Hatchery, I'm happy to see Haj here, who has already expressed interest. There are others also who are expressing interest. We want to turn around this particular facility. We've had this facility for many, many years, probably more than 30 years. And so we've given ourselves really this year to make sure that it is turned around and it is fully operational. And so, again, it is in Rubirizi. It's not far from here. People are visiting, and we want people to be able to take it and use it. Fish Collection Center, again, this is a facility we have in the Special Economic Zone. We want it also to be operational this year. And I'm happy to see Bart here, who also has expressed interest. So I'm happy really to see some of the people who are already showing some interest, but we want as many as possible to also consider some of these opportunities. Milk collection centers. We are really turning around these milk collection centers. Today we have more than 120, close to 120 milk collection centers across the country. Some of them are owned by our companies like Inyange. Others are struggling. And most of them were invested in by government, handed over to the cooperatives, but we really want them to be turned around. So we want some private sector people to form partnerships with these cooperatives and really make them work. Again, this is about heavy investments. We cannot just lose like that. And we want them to be hubs. Hubs in a sense that beyond collecting milk, cooling it, and distributing it, You could also have a service of providing veterinary, services, or even have some other products that people need. So we want it really to be a hub. You could even combine maybe 5 and maybe have ownership of about 5 or 6 or 10 meal collection centers, but we want them to be turned around. These are heavy investments. If you happen to leave or to visit different places across the country, I hope you can visit. Please visit some of them. Talk to these cooperatives who own them. You will see a number of challenges they are facing. You could perhaps develop a partnership with them. Some of them have issues of electricity. We are working very closely with the Minister of Infrastructure to make sure that they have enough electricity to run them. But again, we've profiled these about 97 MCCs because we wanted them to be turned around. We can't afford to lose these investments we've made. Reserves, we are trying to sustainably manage our reserves. You know that we have grain reserves, about 15,000 metric tons every year, 10,000 of maize and 5,000 of beans. Of course, reserves are there for should any problem occur in a particular region, we are able to, to go to those regions with some of this grain. But sustainability of these reserves means that we could also partner with the private sector. We've realized that managing reserves does not mean necessarily to be in the hands of the government. It's a matter of just having an understanding and a partnership with the private sector that also has some infrastructure like the silos or other storage facilities. And then we develop a partnership so that we can really hand over the reserves, but having a certain control because these are important reserves that we want to use. Tea expansion, again, some of these opportunities come back at the level of export cluster because beyond agriculture cluster, I said there are others. There is also an export cluster. So tea expansion, we want to expand, and I'm happy to see a number of players in the tea industry. And this is something that already is happening with some partners, but we wanted you to be aware that this expansion plan is very serious, and we want to be able by end of this year to finalize some of these deals that we've been negotiating for some time now. Gishari Flower Park, this is in Bugesera district. We are starting small, but we have a potential of more than 100 hectares of land where we could put cut flowers under greenhouses. We are looking really for partnerships in this particular project. So I really want to appeal to you also to consider this as an opportunity. And actually to note that the initial partner we had, has pulled out. I don't know if Francis was aware, but, very recently, some of you may know Piyush, who was part of this East African Growers Group and was partnering with us. So he passed away and the family decided to pull out. So we are really calling for new partnerships in this. But even before, we're calling for more partnerships because we have more land for this particular flower business. We really want to really bring back this business that we used to have a number of years ago, but for some reason, we completely lost it, and we want to be able to generate export revenues from the flower business. And so if people would be interested, we'd be happy to discuss. Next, quickly, this is the land. I won't spend, people can be given this presentation so that you can see. This is what I was talking about, the land that we've been able to identify under the ministry's custody. So in Kigali city alone, we own about 310 hectares of land. Now the question we ask ourselves, and we are actually going to now do physical verification, is to say, who does what on that land? And how much are we getting out of that land? So we want to be able to know that. Next. Eastern Province, we have about 31,000 of land. You can see most of it is in Gatsibo, but we also have in Nyagatare now 1,000 and others in other districts. In Western Province, we have about 6,700. This is again land for which we have freehold title as a ministry. But actually we are told some of it is still in the hands of the local government, of districts. So we are yet to collect even more titles for some of the land we have so that we can really monitor each and every plot and see what's going on there. Even sign new contracts with those who are operating there, or even those who want to to operate there, because some of these marshlands are just there, idle, and no one is really taking advantage of them. So next, we have about 2,800 in the northern province. You can see most of it is in Gicumbi and Rulindo, but we also have some in Musanze and Burera. Southern province, about 7,900, most of it being really in Nyaruguru and Gisagara. You know, and so for us, really, this is land that is looking for partnerships. This is land that is looking for investments. But what we are going to do, the next step, we'll be able to share the results with you, is now to verify who is on that land. We know that some of them are being exploited by farmers, either individually or through cooperatives, but we know also that, you know, a lot of it is just idle, waiting for people to exploit it. So those who own mini rigs and who have hotels and who would want to consider investing in some of these vegetables or fruits that they need for the hotels, please do consider going beyond just having a hotel. It's like a farmer cooperative today that grows rice on about 400, 500 hectares. But beyond that, that particular farmer cooperative has a hotel or at least a room where, you know, it can host weddings or other events. So why can't people who have hotels consider also having a farm where they can grow their own vegetables or other crops that they need for. It has probably been, I think people have in the past thought that land would only be owned by those farmers and you would need to go through a kind of an outgrowing scheme or where you expect them to bring, you know, what you want for your hotels. But we've also heard that most of the hotels actually receive very little from farmers, probably not because they don't want to, but because of consistency in quality, but also in quantity. Can we reduce that dependence and allow it to use some of this land? You know, I'm saying this because we know that we can now be able to identify some marshlands, for example, and allow the opportunity to exploit some of them. Where possible, of course, partner with farmers in those areas, but also put in some investments in terms of skills, in terms of inputs, and really reduce that burden to government in terms of subsidizing inputs. We are spending a lot of money every year on subsidizing inputs. Next. So now, this is what I also shared among the Imihigo. These are top 10 sites where now we realized actually this land that you see in the column here is available for the private sector. Nyanza 23 is in Nyanza district. It's about 391 hectares, and all of it is waiting for people. That's really one I said these are a terraced land where we've put quite heavy irrigation infrastructure. A very nice dam where actually you could even develop a tourism attraction. When I look at this particular dam in Nyanza, some of you who may have visited this place, there's really an attraction, a tourism attraction that you can really develop around it. Or you could even do fishing. And I understand there are people already who are soon going to express interest. But we have this land that is available. Karongi, we have about 94, and only about 14, 15 hectares is in use. Again, these are terraces. I don't know why people are really scared of terraces, but when I look at them, you know, if I was in the private sector, I would jump on them and invest in them. So I really hope that you can one of these days visit and see what you could do with these particular plots. National Phase 1, this is about 500. We have 400. Only 100 is in the hands of the farmers. But they have found it difficult to invest in the remaining hectares. Can people also visit? Some people here from the Eastern Province, or even those from other regions, you could visit. Mukunguri, again, is 400. The 150 is under rice, but you could do either rice on the remaining ones or even do other things. We are happy to discuss details should people really want to express interest. Rwamugina, Chiri, Matimba, Rurambi, I mentioned Rurambi, where we have rice under 450, and Muvumba 4 in Nyagatare, and then this one, Gwagitima, about 100 available. So if the total of this particular land, if you look at it, I think it's more than 1,000 hectares that really people can consider investing in. We wanted to share some cases where we found a lot of returns could be expected, so I won't spend much time on that, but this is on the 391 hectares in Nyanza. So we even went ahead to consider and propose some of the crops that could be grown there and generate the maximum revenues. So chili pepper, garlic, green beans, onions, stevia, and others can be considered for whoever wants to invest in that particular area. This is the projected annual profits. You know, optimum agronomic plan, basically having put everything, inputs, agricultural practices, irrigation well maintained and all that, you are able to generate about 6.4 million Rwandan francs per hectare. So this is a quick analysis that was done by our colleagues. I want to thank USAID again for supporting this particular exercise. So this is what we came up with. Karongi, the second case we made. Next, it shows also the profit around 3.8 million Rwandan francs per hectare. These are again proposed crops that people could consider. Inputs, seed production. The target for 2018 is to have 100% of farmers using improved seeds. So today the percentage is very, very low, and we really want people to invest in seeds so that we can really reduce dependence on imported seeds. We are spending, again, a lot of money on imported seeds. So this really shows you where opportunities are, but also the incentives in terms of regulations, but also other incentives. Fertilizer importation, distribution, blending, mostly blending. We really want our soils to consume or to be fed with the right fertilizer, mix that we want to come up with. So can people really do blending? I know there's already one investor who is setting up a facility here, but we know we can do more. In terms of incentives, we've come up with a map with all soil types in this country. So if you wanted to know the soil types that we have in the Western Province, we are happy to share that information with you. Same for the other regions of the country. So people were wondering really the kind of blending they would want to do, but we are able to give you information around the soil types so that you can consider investing in them. This is an opportunity again, the current demand, the consumption, but also the potential consumption. And we have some people in the room who will be able to answer any questions you might have. Post-harvest facilities, today we still lose about 20% of our produce across the various crops that we have been promoting: maize, rice, cassava, and a few others. So we know that with a lot of investments we are putting, so coming from the previous slides where we're encouraging you to invest in production, we are even likely to need more post-harvest handling infrastructure. So the next slide shows the potential, the projections we have for production, which require a number of post-harvest infrastructure. Next. So I will just leave you maybe quickly see these numbers. In terms of the crops that I've mentioned, the projected production by the year 2020, the storage capacity that will be needed, the losses that we are estimating, and the money we will be losing if we do not invest in post-harvest infrastructure and the facilities that are needed. So today, we are at about, I think, 200,000 metric tons of storage capacity, close to that. But looking at really how we are projecting our production, we need even more infrastructure. We need even more facilities. So can really people consider investing in dryers? Can people consider investing in even more silos or warehouses and others? Again, this is an area where government has invested quite heavily over the last 15 years. But I'm happy to also note that the private sector has invested really in some of these facilities. We see a number of warehouses that the private sector has invested in, but we need to do more. Next. This is again opportunities in post-harvest, and this particularly shows even the financing schemes that we have, that we are encouraging people to also consider accessing. We have 40% matching grant and 50% guarantee facilities. And all these, we have Lucia, who is here, would be able to even answer any questions you may have around these schemes that we want people to access. So they're not there for only cooperatives, but they're also there for some individual private players who also want to invest in post-harvest. Next, I think they are the last. Fish feeds. Fish feeds, again, we realize that we need, as we increase production of fish, in our feasibility study that was developed recently, we have a target of reaching 130,000, at least 130,000 metric tons of annual fish production. Today we are at around 25,000. But still I don't know where this fish goes, because I personally don't see much of it, in the market. So, but really the projection is really to have more than 130,000, and we want people to be able to invest in it. Again, I'm happy to note that among us here, there are some people who have already expressed interest in doing this particular business. So how can we really work together to make sure we invest in fish feeds? But I'm also happy to note that people here in the room have invested in other, animal feeds. I think 4 years ago, we didn't have even one, animal feed facility in the country. I think today we have really 4 good ones. And, the chairman himself has invested in that. So I really want to take this opportunity to thank him and others who have invested in animal feeds. But when it comes to fish feeding, we need some investments. So we hope that people can consider investing in those. Next. So this is the last slide around opportunities. People can take note of what we have. Most of these actually are housed in the Ministry of Agriculture, but we work very closely with BDF and banks. I'm sure I saw Ephraim here. I'm sure some of these facilities, people are able to access them through BPR and other commercial banks. What we are trying to do is just to simplify some of the procedures, because we realize, it takes quite some time to get a business plan approved at our level, going through BDF and then reaching a commercial bank. That sometimes also goes through the same process of analyzing the project. So we want to be able to say, because we've hired now a service provider to analyze these business plans on our behalf before they are submitted to the banks, how can these service providers be approved or validated by the banks, so that when the business plan reaches a bank, they don't have to go through the same process, but they make it easy for people to access this finance. So these are the facilities, the Rural Investment Facility, the PRICE, the Post-Harvest and Agribusiness Support Project, and there are a few others that we could not describe in this presentation. But should you need more details, Lucia is here, but anytime you can even drop an email to us or come to the ministry, we'll be able to provide more information on those opportunities. So this is really what we had for you. I have to apologize, it took quite some time, but really I wanted to make sure that people understand where we are coming from, where we are today, and where we are heading. And when we talk about a private sector-driven economy, it's not a myth, it's the reality, at least for Rwanda. And so how can we all here present, and those who are not here, co-own this kind of imihigo I'm talking about, but also beyond, come up with even new opportunities that we may not have identified or described here, and really be able to make a difference in transforming the sector of agriculture. So the growth is about 8.5% that we expect. At least we've been able to be consistent over the last 10 years, between 5 and 6%. But looking at the overall growth we want to achieve of double digit of 11.5, agriculture will have to play its part. I did not mention the industry, but it's also very important. Value addition, packing, canning. These are opportunities that we really want people to consider. When you invest in production on some of this land, of course you'll consider processing, because value addition is the answer. And we want our private sector and other private players who are not here that we try to attract on a daily basis to take this very, very seriously and really prioritize some of these in their future investments. Icyo nagira ngo ngaragaza ahangaha ni amahirwe mu by'ukuri dufite mu guteza imbere ubuhinzi n'ubworozi byacu. Twatangiye tugaragaza aho tugeze, aho twavuye, imbaraga leta yashyize mu kugira ngo ibikenewe by'ingenzi tubashe kuba tubifite uyu munsi, hanyuma mwitabira amahirwe ahari. Twagaragaje ubushobozi bwagiye muri gahunda yo kuhira, tugaragaza ubushobozi bwashyizwe muri gahunda yo gukoresha imashini, ndetse na gahunda ya nkunganire mu kugira ngo abantu babashe kubona inyongeramusaruro. Twagaragaje n'imbaraga zashyizwe muri gahunda yo kugira ngo tugabanye umusaruro dutakaza iyo twasaruye ntitubashe kuwuhunika neza cyangwa kuwumisha n'ibindi bikorwa bikenewe. Ibyo byose nibyo twagaragaje byagiye mu bushobozi. Noneho duhita tugaragaza noneho amahirwe ahari twifuza ko abantu babona. Twagaragaje ko hari ubutaka minisiteri ifite mu maboko, ifitiye ibyangombwa bigera hafi ku 50 bya hegitari, aho twagiye tunagaragaza muri buri karere aho usanga ubwo butaka. Tukavuga tuti ni gute twabyaza umusaruro uko bishoboka byose, tukavanamo umusaruro uhagije kuri buri hegitari y'ubutaka tugiye dufite hirya no hino. Ariko noneho mu kubyaza umusaruro tukaba twajya no mu bindi bikorwa byo kongera agaciro no kugira ngo izi hoteli dufite, ababa bazifite, ababa bazikoramo bajye babasha kuba babona ibyo bakoresha muri hoteli bitarenze kuva hanze nk'uko tubibona uyu munsi. So ibyo ngibyo nibyo twagiye tugaragaza amahirwe ari mu gukora mu kujya mu nyongeramusaruro. Uyu munsi imbuto z'indobanure dufite tuzivana mu bihugu byo hanze. Ese uyu munsi ntabwo dushobora kubona ubutaka twashyiraho ibyo bikorwa? Tuzi ko rimwe na rimwe ababikora hanze kubera ubushakashatsi baba barakoze ntibakunze gutanga licenses cyangwa ibyangombwa byabo kugira ngo ube wabikora. Ariko hari abo turi kugirana ibiganiro, namwe mushobora kuba mwagirana ibiganiro kugira ngo turebe uburyo twabasha kwikorera imbuto z'indobanure mu gihugu. Ndetse twanagaragaje uburyo bwo kugira ngo tube twakwikorera amafumbire y'ubutaka bwacu bukeneye. Navuze ko dufite amakuru ahagije ku bwoko cyangwa se ku moko y'ubutaka dufite mu gihugu hose. Uwakwifuza ayo makuru twamwereka ku ikarita. Ushaka guhinga mu burengerazuba tukakwereka ubwoko bw'ubutaka tubafite, kugira ngo niba ushaka gukora uruganda rukora ibyo ngibyo twifuza gushyiramo ayo mafumbire atandukanye, ube wamenya ese ndavanga gute. Ku icyo tuvuga cyane cyane ni ukuvanga. Turashaka kurenga NPK tuzana tugashyira mu butaka urea, DAP, ariko tugashaka uburyo twakongeramo indi myunyungugu ibikenewe. Ibigasaba rero ko habaho kuvanga, ariko tugashaka ko bivangirwa mu gihugu. Ese ni gute abantu bifuza kumenya ayo makuru batwegera tukaba twayabaha bakabasha kuba bayifashisha kugira ngo bashore imari. Twagaragaje mu birebana no korora amafi, tugaragaza ko gahunda dufite nuko mu myaka 5 iri imbere tuzaba byibuze tugeze ku 130 bya toni. Uyu munsi turakabaka 20-25, ariko nkanagaragaza ko ngewe ntanabibona ku isoko, sinzi wenda abandi niba babibona. Nagira ngo rero twakomeje rero gusaba ko abantu bashishikara nabyo kubishoramo imari, cyane cyane noneho tukareba n'ibiryo by'ayo mafi nabyo bikenewe. Nshima cyane cyane abantu bagiye bashyira ubushobozi bwabo mu biryo by'amatungo bitandukanye. Uyu munsi dufite inganda enye, mu myaka 3 inishize nta ruganda twari dufite mu gihugu, ariko tukabona ko hari n'abandi noneho bafite ubushake bwo kuba bashora imari mu biryo by'amafi. Ese ni gute abantu nabo babishyiramo imbaraga kugira ngo bibe byabasha gukorwa? Ibirebana n'umusaruro dutakaza, uyu munsi 20% w'umusaruro, waba uva mu bigori, waba uva mu muceri, waba uva mu ngano, waba uva mu myumbati n'ibindi, 20% dutakaza ni byinshi cyane. Iyo ubishyize mu mibare wasanga ari ibihumbi byinshi bya toni. Ese ni gute abantu mu bushobozi bwabo, kubera ko ubu ngubu dufite hafi 200 bya toni by'ahantu dushobora guhunika imyaka, ariko mu birebana no kumisha, uyu munsi dufite ahantu bumishiriza hagera nko kuri 200 gusa na 80 mu gihugu, ariko twararebye dusanga ngo mu by'ukuri hakenewe 9,000 mu gihugu hose. Wenda dushobora kudakora ibyo 9,000 byose, ariko ntekereza ko hari n'ukuntu umuntu ashobora kuba yashyira umushinga umwe munini mu karere runaka cyangwa mu ntara runaka, akaba ari umushinga wagera ku baturage benshi bashoboka, aho kugira ngo buri muturage cyangwa buri koperative igire ubwo bwanikiro cyangwa se n'ubwo bushobozi bundi, umuntu umwe mu bikorera akaba yafata icyo gitekerezo akaba yakibyaza umusaruro kugira ngo ibyo byose bibashe kugerwaho. Ubu rero muri makeya ngerageje gusoza, navuga ko twebwe turashaka gushyira imbaraga nka leta mu kuborohereza, dufatanyije n'urwego rw'igihugu rushinzwe kwihutisha iterambere n'izindi nzego za leta zitandukanye. Ibikorwa remezo by'ingenzi by'ibanze biba bikenewe turashaka gukomeza kubishyiramo imbaraga. Mu mihigo twagaragaje ahangaha ya minisiteri nako y'ubuhinzi irebana na sekiteri y'ubuhinzi atari ya minisiteri, turagaragaza abafatanyabikorwa batandukanye. Turagaragaza minisiteri y'ibikorwa remezo, turagaragaza minisiteri y'ubutegetsi bw'igihugu n'izindi minisiteri dukorana umunsi ku wundi. Ariko noneho tukifuza ko n'abikorera nabo babigiramo uruhare. Tuborohereze, dushyiraho amategeko akwiye, dushyiraho za politike zikwiye, hanyuma namwe muzanemo ubushobozi mufite kugira ngo ubutaka dufite tubashe kububyaza umusaruro, kugira ngo tugabanye imbaraga zitari nyinshi leta ifite yakomeje kugenda ishyira mu buhinzi n'ubworozi, tube twareba ko twagabanya bikaba byajya no mu bindi by'ingenzi n'abanyarwanda nabo bakeneye. Ubuhinzi n'ubworozi ni sekiteri igifatiye runini igihugu cyacu, ni hafi 30% y'umusaruro w'igihugu, ni abaturage barenga 70%, ariko no mu birebana no kohereza ibikomoka ku buhinzi mu mahanga, ubuhinzi buracyafite uruhare runini cyane. Turifuza rero ko buri wese abishyiramo imbaraga kugira ngo 8.5% dushaka ko ubuhinzi n'ubworozi bizamukaho buri mwaka ku kigereranyo, tuzabashe kubigeraho tuvuye kuri 5-6 uyu munsi turiho, twabashije kugeraho mu myaka 10 ishize bivuye mu mbaraga n'ubundi zacu. Twumva rero nta cyatunanira niba twese dufatanyije. Nyakubahwa Perezida wa Repubulika ejo yabigarutseho, yavuze ko mu bufatanye hagati y'inzego za leta n'inzego z'abikorera ubundi nta kintu cyagombye kutunanira. Ariko akanavuga ibintu bitatu by'ingenzi: niba twicaye ntitugire icyo dukora bizaduhenda, nidukora ibintu tukabikora nabi bizaduhenda, ariko nitunakora byinshi bizaduhenda. Ariko se muri ibyo bitatu wahitamo iki? Ndumva twahitamo ibyo dushobora gukora byinshi byaba byaduhenda ariko tuzi inyungu twazavanamo ku bukungu bw'igihugu cyacu, ku banyarwanda dushaka gukura mu bukene umunsi ku wundi. Ndabashimiye cyane.
So I'm Yvette Mutoni. I coordinate the Investment Promotion and Facilitation Department at RDB, and I'm really here to reinforce the message of Honorable Minister, but focusing on the incentives and benefits that the new investment code and the existing incentives that are offered if you decide to be in agriculture-related projects that were discussed before. So I'm going to start with the few things that were maintained in the old investment code that will still benefit investors in agriculture-related projects. Exemption on capital gain taxes is one of the incentives that were maintained. The 50% accelerated depreciation, if I can explain a bit on this. Before, we used to have an investment code in 2005 that was offering 50% accelerated depreciation in some areas of the country and 40% in other areas of the country. In this new code, it's 50% whenever or wherever you want to invest or to have your investment project based. So what this means is that if the accelerated depreciation on your machinery and equipment is 50%, it reduces the imposable income, and that's how it becomes one of the incentives. The VAT refund used to be more than maybe a month, but today is reduced to 15 days. So once you want to claim your VAT, you're able to claim it in less than a month, in 2 weeks, basically. And of course, depending on your project and the nature of your project, you're going to benefit from immigration incentives. If in your project you want to have some some expertise from abroad to come and maybe have a joint venture with you, you're going to be able to benefit from free work permits for the first 3 and other immigration-related incentives. Next. So this slide really focuses on what Honorable Minister was saying, that in the vision of agriculture sector, the main focus is really to focus on value addition and export as well. So in the new investment code, export-related agriculture projects have been given quite a focus, and are some of the projects that are going to benefit from the 15% corporate income tax, because they're export-related, and the export is one of the priority sectors. So these projects include agriculture-based projects. Another key benefit for those big projects, and I know Honorable Minister mentioned some consortium, and we see this happening through consortium in this room. Would you be interested? Is for investors that are exporting at least 50% of turnover for processed tea and coffee with value addition. Like I said, value addition is one of the focus in this new code. So this is also an area where people will benefit from 15% corporate income tax. There's a tax holiday that was introduced in this new code, and the tax holiday focuses on manufacturing, including agro-processing companies investing at least USD 15 million USD, and with 30% being private equity. So this also is an incentive that does not leave away agro-processing and agriculture-based projects. Next. So the incentives for agriculture projects are not only limited to the new incentive, the new investment code. There are other laws and provisions that also offer quite interesting incentives when it comes to agro-processing and agriculture projects. Some are provided for in the VAT law, which means that all imported agriculture inputs are going to be exempted of VAT. And there's another incentives that comes in the income tax law that specifies some projects that are more or less a small-scale project, because there will be an exemption on profit for projects that are not exceeding 12 million. So these are the few incentives that we have in the agriculture sector. And of course, having said that, you also have, as an investor in agriculture projects, all the incentives that you get from working with RDB, having RDB working with you throughout the process, facilitating your investment and guiding you through what you can invest in, how you can make these incentives materialize, and basically all the non-incentive related facilitations will be available for you. So that's basically what we have in both the new investment code, the existing income tax law, VAT law, all other laws that provide for incentives for investors when it comes to agriculture projects. So that's basically what it is. One thing I probably forgot to mention is that in the old investment code, we used to have a threshold for someone to qualify as an investor, which used to be 100,000 USD for local investors. That threshold is no longer applicable. So irrespective of the amount you want to bring to the table to start your investment, you still are going to benefit from the investment certificate and enjoy all these incentives. So that's basically what it is. Thank you. Okay. Mu Kinyarwanda icyo nagerageje kuvuga yuko dufite itegeko rishyashya ryo korohereza abashoramari. Iryo tegeko rikaba hari ibintu by'ingenzi rifite byerekeranye inyungu zerekeranye n'imishinga ishingiye ku buhinzi n'ubworozi. Iyo mishinga, izo incentives cyangwa ibyo bintu bishyashya byaje muri iryo tegeko rishya, hari ibirimo bishingiye ku mishinga yose irimo n'imishinga y'ubuhinzi, ariko hari n'izindi benefits ziri specified ku mishinga y'ubuhinzi, cyane cyane iyo hariho kongera valeur y'imishinga ishingiye ku buhinzi, cyangwa no kohereza mu mahanga ibintu biturutse ku buhinzi. So nagiye mvuga ibyari biri mu itegeko ryarangiye ariko bikiri applicable muri no tegeko. Navuze ibishyashya byajemo byerekeranye n'imishinga yose ishingiye ku buhinzi, iri mu cyayi no muri coffee, iyo bigaragara yuko hongerewe inyungu, hongerewe valeur kuri iyo mishinga. Nagiye mvuga ibyerekeranye n'imishinga minini cyane, yenda yaba igeze ku bihumbi 50 kuri miliyoni 50 z'amadolari, uko n'imishinga yerekeranye ishingiye ku buhinzi nayo irimo. Nagiye navuga n'izindi nyungu zitari muri rino tegeko rishyashya ryo korohereza abashoramari, ariko riri mu mategeko dusanganywe mu gihugu nk'itegeko ry'inyongera ku nyungu n'iri tegeko rya VAT, ko bigenda hagenda hazamo inyungu zihariye zerekeranye n'imishinga y'ubuhinzi. Nanavuze ndangiza ko si ibyo gusa, hari na RDB hari kugira ngo ikomeze ibafashe mu mishinga yanyu, ibafashe ibagire inama, ibabwire igikenewe gukorwa kugira ngo izi benefits zose muzibone. Naho ngaho narangirije. Murakoze.
Uyu ni umwanya wo gutanga ibitekerezo kandi mu bitange mu ndimi zose izo mwumva muri comfortable. Aha, namubonye hariya. Buri wese arajya yivuga izina rye hanyuma atange n'igitekerezo.
Murakoze nyakubahwa minisita. Nge ntabwo ari igitekerezo, ni ikintu nshaka kugira ngo menyeshe abagenzi banjye b'abacuruzi bashaka gushora imari mu buhinzi. Mwana bibonye hari minisitiri yabyerekanye hariya ko ku gihingwa cy'ibirayi ubu hari gahunda yo gupromotinga ubucuruzi bw'ibirayi. Ubu hari amakampani, abahinzi bamaze gukora amakampani yabo yaho bazajya bakusanyiriza umusaruro. None ariko bakeneye kampani yindi izajya yakira umusaruro, ariko cyane cyane igamije export. Iyo kampani iriho ubu yagiyeho. Gushoramo imari umugabane munini ni miliyoni 60, umugabane mutoya ni miliyoni 3. Ariko noneho iyo kampani iri hano Kigali izayifatanije n'abahinzi. Ni ukuvuga ngo abahinzi bazaba bafite 40% muri kampani hano Kigali, na nino kampani Kigali ifite 40% ku bahinzi kugira ngo bagire ubufatanye. Mwumva rero ari ikintu ntabura kubabwira kugira ngo mutazumva ko ari ikintu wenda hari abantu babonye za opportunity bagahisha bagenzi babo. Ubishaka ashobora imigabane iracagurishwa, ariko turi hafi kurangiza. Ababishaka chairman ni umugabo witwa Ntazinda, sinzi niba ari muri inama, niba atarimo nababwira telefone ze, yabahana nimero za konti ababishaka, cyangwa mukafata za information byose nabibaha. Ababishaka bumva bashaka gushoramo imari ni open. Murakoze nyakubahwa minisita.
Ni ikibazo, ni ibyifuzo, ariko ngendaganisha ku buhinzi buganisha ku mwuga. Tugahingira isoko ryacu ndetse n'isoko mpuzamahanga. Nkuko mwabigaragaje hariya mu bijyanye na export, kugira ngo tugere muri export nyakubahwa minisita mwatwetse hari imibare myinshi, kuko turi abacuruzi, yari amafaranga twe turi amafaranga. Ariko iyo by'amafaranga ureba na challenges zirimo kugira ngo ya mafaranga uzigereho, nikorera na za opportunities. Ibyo byose nyakubahwa minisita nge nabirebye, numva biranshimishije, ariko hazanye kuzamo akantu k'imunyenye gatoya. Buriya kugira ngo tuganishe kuri export nyakubahwa minisita, iyo value chain yose, iya chaîne de valeur yose, kugira ngo tugere ku isoko ndetse ku muryi, nyakubahwa minisita hari ibyo tugomba kuba dufite. Mbereye ku murima, buriya kugira ngo ugere ku isoko wahiriye ku murima nyakubahwa minisita, kugira ngo exporting tugomba kuba dufite amasertifika. Namwe murabizi kuko hari amasertifika asabwa ku isoko mpuzamahanga, hari Global Gap, hari Fair Trade, biterwa n'icyifuzo cy'umuhinzi cyangwa se n'isoko icyo bigusaba. Ayo masertifika urebye nyakubahwa minisita ntayo dufite kugira ngo accessing international market. Ayo masertifika rero akatubera cyane cyane barriers kugira ngo tugere kuri iryo soko mpuzamahanga. Ariko ntabwo bivuga yuko hatarimo abanyamuryango bacemba y'ubuhinzi bagera kuri amasoko mpuzamahanga, ariko aba ari amasoko ataduha amafaranga menshi, kandi nta nubwo bantu nyakubahwa minisita bari babigiramo umwuga cyane. Nkaba nshishikariza abagenzi bagenda abashoramari bari hano ibyo ko twabigeraho. Iyo utekereje gutyo tuzamutse tukagenda tukagera muri tuvuye ku murima, ni ukuvuga ngo ibicuruzwa byabonetse, ariko tugomba gupackaging. Packaging yacu nta gisobanuro, ntago igurisha. Packaging nyakubahwa minisita burya irakurura. Uzareba nko inzoga ziri muri comptoir, ikibura ikintu kigurisha cyane ni label. Labeling zacu nazo ntago zisobanutse. Ibyo nabyo haracyarimo izindi weakness zirimo cyane, kandi nabyo ku buryo dushishikarije mufatanyije na private sector, abashoramari bari hano nabo bakinjira mu bijyanye no kujyana gukora za labeling zisobanutse, bijyanye packaging zisobanutse. Nyakubahwa minisita, hari ibyo mwabemerera cyangwa se kuko hari ibyo mwabafashamo kugira ngo ibyo bintu nabyo bishobotse. Iyo tuvuye muri packaging hagomba kujyaho rero transport yacu iracyari hasi cyane. Urabona kugira ngo umuntu transportinga nk'ibintu ngo tuvuge wenda fresh product za vegetables nk'imboga, kugira ngo zigende zigera ku isoko mpuzamahanga, tuvuge muri supermarché, ni ukuvuga yuko ya temperature zavanye mu murima bamaze kubitunganya neza muri izo nzu facilities igera kuri iryo soko, bigomba kuba bifite temperature imwe kugira ngo za mboga zitaza gupfa cyangwa se za mbuto n'ibindi byose. Aho ngaho transport yacu nayo ntabwo isobanutse, kandi namwe murabizi ukuntu abantu bivanira nk'inanasi, ukabona inanasi bayizanye bayicuritse, indi barayitambitse, kandi hari uburyo bwo kwikorera ibyo bihingwa bikwiye bigera ku isoko byaba mu gihugu cyangwa se mpuzamahanga. Nyakubahwa minisitiri, ubwo tuvuye muri transport tugomba gutekereza ubwo tuganisha ku isoko mpuzamahanga hariya ku kibuga cy'indege. Hariya ku kibuga cy'indege hari cold room. Sinzi niba cold room yabaye private sector cyangwa se ikakomeza ka government ikayiyobora. Sinzi icyakorwa aho ngaho kugira ngo ibintu bibe byiza. Noneho wajya kureba ukareba indege. Ku bijyanye n'indege, nyakubahwa minisita, iyo ngibyo twagishimira guverinoma yacu kuko kargo yarabonetse kandi n'igiciro cyaragabanutse. Iyo ukompaye n'ibihugu duturanye, tukajyaga twikompara na Kenya, tukajya twikompara na Uganda, nyakubahwa minisita, ubu ngubu igiciro cyacu cy'indege cy'ubwikorezi kujyana mu mahanga cyaragabanyutse. Ibyo nkabashimira abagenzi banjye kuko kubijyamo biroroshye, ariko niba indege ikibazo cyarabonetse twakivuze inshuro nyinshi cyane, bakagera bakabyumva. Rwanda ni ukuyishimira cyane kuko yabyumvishije, ariko noneho tugasubira noneho tukareba inyuma kugira ngo tugere muri export. Hari ibintu byinshi bikenewe ndetse no mu gihugu hagati. Murakoze nyakubahwa minisita.
Rakoze, thank you, Christine. Maybe very briefly, I think Laurent has talked about the opportunity in the potato value chain. So if you are interested, they've come up with a very good business model that really allows us to control the movement of this particular crop from the farms, mostly in the northern province and western province, to Kigali, with a wholesale market here in Kigali and a number of collection centers in those regions where we grow potatoes. So the aim is really to increase productivity for potatoes, but also in terms of really trading and making sure that there is a fair price at the level of the farmer. So we want to commend really the efforts being put into this by our local investors. And he's encouraging many of you who would be interested to buy some shares. And I think he said they are closing soon, but should you be interested, you can see him after this session and have more information from him on how you could invest in this particular area. Now, kubirebana n'ibyo Christine avuze, nagira ngo ibi byinshi tukibonamo imbogamizi, tubishakira uburyo tubonamo amahirwe. Dukore umushinga munini ukemura ibyo bibazo byinshi bigenda bivugwa, tubibyazemo amahirwe. Ibi ni ibibazo tumaze imyaka myinshi tugenda tubigarukaho. Iyo tuvuga packaging, labeling, tukavuga izi transport costs cyangwa n'izi facilities zikenewe hirya no hino mu gihugu kugira ngo umusaruro ujye uva ku murima ugere ku ndege cyangwa n'ahandi ugifite ubwimerere bwawo. Ese ibyo ngibyo ni gute twabishyiramo imbaraga bikaba ari mu mushinga umwe munini mwazana mwishyize hamwe nk'uko abantu bishyira hamwe bakavuga ngo bagiye kubaka ibikorwa bitandukanye? Turabizi ndanabivugira yuko abari muri PSF bagiye bishyira hamwe bagakora za investment groups, ariko sinzi niba hari investment group yari yagira umushinga munini wo kuvuga ngo hariyo nagiye numva za Westpeak bajya navuga amabatwari sinzi aho bigeze nagira ngo twubakire kuri ibyo ngibyo.